beautiful. How are you this week? You are listening to the Africana Woman podcast, and I'm your host, Chulu. Every week, I ask an Africana woman to invite us into her home to give us a snapshot into what happens behind her closed doors. I hope you will join me on this journey of discovery, revelation, and self-awareness. I'm not going to lie. It may become uncomfortable sometimes. However, I encourage you to push past your unease and challenge yourself to think differently. The simple act of expanding yourself to receive the unknown may be transformational for you. Tomorrow, guys, is Valentine's Day. Let me take the opportunity to be the first to say, Happy Valentine's, my darling. I hope you have a day that is filled with genuine acts of love. Now, relationships have been on my mind these last couple of months because I'm single and possibly ready to mingle. But isn't it interesting how people around you profile the type of man that you should be with? Has that ever happened to you? Well, in my case, I have been told that I should marry a Muzungu because I'm too westernized, in inverted commas, for traditional African men. I had a lot to say about that, which you can find in the Africana Woman blog in a post called, Would You Date a White Guy? Nonetheless, babe, I hope you can be discerning about what type of man you allow in your life. And if you realize later that you are in a dangerous environment, I pray you have the courage to walk away without worrying about what other people will say. And our guest today has a powerful story of her strength to walk away from narcissism and gaslighting. The Africana woman in the spotlight is my P2P sister, Rochelle Malone. Rochelle is a certified coach and minister. She is the former co-pastor and co-founder of a faith-based organization in her native hometown of Memphis, Tennessee, where she faithfully served in full-time ministry for over 17 years. She has combined her many years of ministry with the vehicle of coaching and founded Graced Solutions LLC, a platform from which she serves as an executive coach, featured keynote speaker, business strategist, and business consultant with various individuals, schools, universities, churches, and organizations. Rochelle's desire is to see women leaders embrace their grace or strength to live a fulfilling and authentic life. Now, I must say that whenever you see Rochelle, she is so graceful, guys. Without missing a beat. She's always dressed like a lady and is soft-spoken. So when she tells her story of how she was institutionalized in a psychiatric hospital in an attempt to make her get lost in the system, you cannot help but be shocked. But what is even sadder is the person who was behind this plot was none other than her husband at the time. You have to hear it to believe it. This was our conversation.
Hi!
Hello.
Oh, looking beautiful as always.
You are a sweetheart, and so are you.
Thank
It's an honor to be here.
I'm so excited. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Ready?
Well, thank you so much, Chulu. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for what you do for the community of women, just empowering us with knowledge. I can't say enough about what you do, and I am very appreciative. So a little bit about me. I'm a Southerner.
Yes.
For those of you who don't know, I'm from the United States, and I'm from this southern region, Memphis, Tennessee area. And my journey is a little different. And I guess going back a little bit even to my childhood, I'm the youngest of 5 children. I grew up in a middle class home with a mom and a dad in the family, seen the traditional role of mom and dad. And from a young age, I was a high achiever. You know, I excelled in honors classes in elementary school and in high school, junior high school, honors classes. I even received an academic scholarship to college. So I was able to go to college free, because of my grades. So academics and achievement was always a part of who I was. Well, while I was there in high school and throughout school, I never dated. You know, my parents' notion was my schoolwork was my boyfriend. So that was my mindset. So I never dated in high school. But in college, I ended up meeting a very fascinating young man. And we were both in the gospel choir together, in which we both loved God. We were Christians, and we wanted to find an outlet in which we could pursue our growth in Christ. So gospel choir was one of the outlets, and we started going to Bible study, and then to come to find out he was a minister. And so I was intrigued with him because he was a young man on fire for God and loved God, very charismatic. He was, popular on campus, and I was the shy, quiet wallflower, not really speaking much to people. But anyway, we ended up developing a relationship. He was my first love, my college sweetheart. And one of the things that he desired, well, we both desired, is that we wanted to marry young because we wanted to start a ministry and to do it right and raise a family. And in our 40s, our goal was to pretty much be able to retire, in a sense, from what we've worked for and just enjoy life. Well, it didn't work that way. And things happen, life happens, and you're thrown a curveball. And so fast forward to 2007, that was the life-changing year for me. Up until that point, and this is a backdrop, up until that point, we started a ministry with 6 people, 6 of our closest friends in college, and it grew to, at that time, in the early 2000s, you would say a mega church in our area. Now that we have churches with 15 and 20,000 members, we had about 1,000 members. That was pretty good in our area. And so we grew that, with grassroots, with blood, sweat, and tears and prayer. And we had a good life. I lived a good life. I was a stay-at-home mom, worked in ministry full-time, had 4 beautiful girls. Life was well, but there was something, there's a saying that a minister said, you have that feeling when you take a shower. If you get in the shower with your socks on, just in a rush, you feel like there's something on, something right, but not quite right. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was in the shower with my socks on, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Well, 2007 was a transitional year for us. We had, our church was growing, ministry was growing, kids were going well. And there were some different influences around, I guess, it opened a different arena. And just to say, long story short, my husband and I were having issues in our relationship, which is common when you have those levels of growth, and there were issues. But the issues were red flags that were coming to a head. Long story short, let me just let the cat out the bag. Here I was, a college-educated woman. Here I was, a co-pastor of a church. Here I was, a leader to other women. I was a leader to my children, and I found myself in a mental hospital. And how in the world could I go from, and there's nothing wrong if there was a need for it, but I was falsely put into a mental hospital. And, how does that happen? It happens because I didn't know who I was. And just going, what I really wanted to talk about today was, as Black women, as women in leadership, sometimes we live in glass houses and we're not able to have safe places that we can talk to or people that are informed to share knowledge with us. And I sought counsel, but all of my counsel was, baby, just pray about it. You know how Black men are, just pray about it. And so I prayed. I was even over prayer. I was the intercessory leader in my church. So I prayed and had others praying with me. But it just seemed like, Lord, what is going on? Why is, why don't I see a resolve? And I come to understand that with prayer, the Bible says to pray without ceasing. But also it says with all of, for lack of knowledge, people perish. Well, I was perishing because I didn't realize I didn't have a mental illness. I was dealing with someone who had a mental illness. I was dealing with a narcissistic husband. And people don't like to talk about
Rochelle?
that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let me just ask a question. So, you've told us how you were in college and you had a desire to start a ministry and you went on to do that and become successful. So, what is the time frame? How many years had passed before this came to head?
It was 17 years. 17 years. But the red flags were there.
Okay.
And let me go back and preface it. It takes two. You can't put all of the ownership, all of the responsibility on one. I had a part to play too. And my part was I was codependent. And one of the things that I've learned about narcissism is that a narcissistic person can be so intoxicating. He was my first love. And I also go back and preface it to the fact we were both young. We both didn't know. So this is not a blame or smashing of anybody's character. It's my truth, and it's an awareness. Had I known differently, I believe things could have been differently for me and my children and those that were affected. So many people's lives were affected because of lack of knowledge. And then the Bible says, if you don't have knowledge in certain areas, you will perish. So it was a 17-year instance, but it was things along the way. Like I said, I felt like I was in a shower with socks on. When things were well, things were great. I love my husband, and I believe to the best of his ability, he loved me. But I think at some point, it got to the goals changed and things. You wanted something. He wanted something different, and it was the fact of in my research, what I've learned, this was a natural occurrence in the 1800s among men in leadership. If they wanted to get rid of their spouse, they put them in a mental hospital because there were no questions asked. And it was like, oh, you did her. Oh, you loved her so much. You put her in a place where she can be helped. And that person could go on with life. And even today, when you're committed to a mental hospital let me just say, while I was in the mental hospital, and the premise for me going to the mental hospital was that I was strong-armed. My ex-husband at the time told me that if I didn't do everything, at that time he was putting on me that I was had bipolarism and that I was depressed. And if I didn't go get help, that it was going to be a detriment to the ministry, it's going to be a detriment to my family. So in order for us to continue to be married, I had to go get help. And so the premise was, well, I'm saving my marriage. What wouldn't you do to save your marriage? What wouldn't you do to save your children and to protect them? I didn't come from a family of divorce. My parents, before my father passed, were married almost 60 years. My grandparents were married. I did not come from a household of divorce, so I did not understand or even have the ramifications to understand what divorce meant. So that was never an option. I was just going to grow and work and make my marriage work. But while I was there, I think the third week that I was there, I was supposed to go for 3 days. And that was my understanding to the mental hospital. And when I say mental hospital, I just thought I was going to go get help for depression. But that was not the case. And like I say, I have, I'll be able to share that in another forum. I don't want to get too caught up into that. But I was tricked into going. And what was 3 days turned into 28 days. And really, I had no clue when I was going to get out. And it was just the grace of God. The therapist there stepped in and they recognized that something wasn't right. And I started realizing, they started kind of saying, maybe there's a thin line between love and hate. Just the behavior that is being displayed is showing us that something's not right in this situation. So they deal with situations every day. So they can recognize and see when something is not right and something's not adding up. So that was just a whole journey. But in 28 days, I lost everything. I lost my marriage. I lost my kids. I lost my ministry. I lost my money. Everything. And as I was about to say, that when you have a person committed, a person can get everything. And so I lost custody of my children. I lost everything. And my husband at the time presented to me, he wanted to do a no contest divorce. I was clueless about legal things. I was just this typical suburban mom, living that life and allowing him to run everything. And that's one of the things that I learned. It was so intoxicating. Like I say, the charismatic or narcissistic person is so charismatic. They're just the life of the party. They know what to say. They know how to treat you. And that's how it was. He treated me. He took very well. I was a well-kept woman. I didn't have any material things that I didn't have a want for, but the emotional needs were deficit. And it was like I had all the trappings, beautiful home, beautiful car, nice vacations, but I wasn't ministered to because I wasn't allowed to be myself. And with a narcissist, everything is about him. And going back to that detrimental combination of a codependent and a narcissist. Yeah. They feed off of one another. You know, I was a codependent because I went from my father's house to my husband's house. I never lived a life independently before. And he was taking care of everything. He was doing everything. And he made sure he handled everything. So, and I was a pleaser. You know, but some of the things that I realized in real love, you shouldn't have to walk on eggshells. You shouldn't have to think about, you know, what you're going to say or how you're going to say it, or you shouldn't feel that it's okay to have your feelings minimized. At the end of my marriage, I realized in order for me to function, I deadened my emotions. And I was sharing with you when we talked briefly, Oprah's magazine at that time had just come out. And in many of her books, she would have a survey. And the survey would be kind of like a self-awareness, like where are you, how happy are you, and all these different things. I could never take those surveys because it meant that I had to self-reflect. It meant that I had to dig deep and really ask myself, am I really happy? And the answer was no. I had to put on the mask to be what I needed to be to all people. I had to be what I needed to be to my husband. I had to be what I needed to be. Of course, I love my kids. That wasn't a mask. But to ministry, many a times you had to straighten up your face because of maybe a very harsh word or the way that he had dealt with me. It was like, you're just so sensitive. And other people, older women, like, baby, you're just so sensitive. Stop being so sensitive. It's like my feelings didn't matter. And I realized in order to function, I deadened my emotions. I deadened how I felt just to go through the motions. That was one instance of that kind of like made me kind of have a red flag about what's really going on with me. But I didn't have time. I was too busy. I was a wife of a thriving ministry, 4 beautiful girls. They were active in sports, so I didn't have time to think. And that's one of the things too. I realized that when a person that has control over your life, or you yield to that control of your life, you're busy all the time. You don't have time to sit and think. Had I had time to really sit and think and put things together, I would have been able to say, this is why, this is why. And I started trying to get self-help books, but, the pleaser part of me would read things and I would try to bring it to my ex-husband and he'd, that's not true. Oh, that's not true. So I was looking to him to validate what I was feeling.
Oh. Yeah.
And that was a no-no. Yeah. He would always say, no, this is not, or the phrase was, black men don't act like that. When I would read about marriage books and try to say, well, this is what I need from you. Oh, black men don't act like that. That's just what in the books. So I was left confused and dazed because I didn't have anybody that I can talk to. And I don't know what it's like in your culture, but in our culture, especially in the Christian culture, therapy and help is somewhat shunned upon. No one had ever shared. Yeah, well, pray about it. You pray about it, you get your answer. And so I prayed about it. I was doing the best I could. And the more I was trying to do better, the more codependent I became. I was like, well, I'm going to win them over with love. I'm just going to be nicer to them. I'm going to be, just try to overcome evil with love. Because toward the end, it was aware that there were some other factors going on. And when I tried to bring awareness to it, the more I got beat down. And even the fact of going into, another term that I talk about is gaslighting. I was heavily gaslighted to the point that he was trying to make me say that I was crazy by asking me certain questions. And
so,
go ahead.
Yeah, Rochelle, just because you're using terms that people are maybe not too familiar with, gaslighting, like what is your definition? Because now you know very clearly what these things are. Just let us know what those definitions are,
Okay. Gaslighting is a it's a psychological manipulation that a partner uses on another partner, basically to cause that person to lose their footing or their sharing or their confidence. There's a movie that was made about it years ago, and it was based upon the idea that it was a post light in front of the house. It was a gas light in the front of the house. And every night at 8:00, the gentleman would go and turn it off. And the lady would see it. And she's like, "Did you see that?" He's like, "See what?" "The light just went off." She's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And that's the good example of what gaslighters do. You know how something was. You know how you all may have stories. How did you meet or how did you do? Just simple things. And what the story is, but he'll change it. And he's like, "You don't remember that? That's not how that went." And just trying to undermine your thinking.
Girl, after the year we just had, I know as an entrepreneur and a leader, things got real lonely really fast. Uncertainty has become the order of the day, and yet we must continue to not only survive but thrive. So as a leader, who do you turn to fill your cup? To give you inspiration, to teach you, and to mentor you? We have created a community just for this very reason, to support each other, to hold each other accountable, and to be each other's cheerleaders. This group is called the Africana Women Visionaries because we're looking past the storm and are focused on the vision we have for our companies and the African continent. Join the Africana Women Visionaries free Facebook group to learn more. Now back to the conversation.
And with me, I say, how in the world could I was a leader, I was proficient in other areas. How did I end up in a mental hospital? And I'm still baffled. How did that happen? Because it was constantly, you're this, you're that, you're this. Well, you're depressed, you're this. How can someone diagnose you that's not clinically trained? But I love my husband, and I knew what I had to do, or I thought I had to do, to save my marriage and save my family. And I think that was the most devastating thing, to do what I did to save my marriage and save my family, only to lose my family. Like I said, the third week that I was there, he came to me and told me that he wanted a divorce. And I'm thinking, well, you told me to come here to take care of me when I know that there was nothing wrong with me, but I did it because I wanted my family. I wanted things to stay as normal, but this was a plan, and it was done in a sense to have a skeleton in your closet, because it was like, you don't want people to know where you've been, and it's like, well, yeah, it's kind of like always a secret. If you don't want people to know where you've been, you need to cooperate, and that was the gist. But God is so good, and I'm going to share, at a later date, just how God delivered me, but He didn't allow it to go as planned. But, just as women, I just wanted to be, just bring awareness that this happens a lot. And oftentimes is with educated women. That's what I found out. We're high achievers. We seek to do well. And then it's like we take that same passion and bring it into the relationship. But we can't fix another person. We can't change another person. We have to see the flags as they are. And I saw the flags all along. My family saw the flags. But, you're blinded by love. And I just thought, well, he'll change over time. And some things did get better, but then some things didn't get better, to the point where it was like a mastermind of how do I get rid of my wife and keep everything? Because that's literally what happened. Had he succeeded with that plan, he would have gotten rid of me, just removed me, went on with ministry, went on with my children, and went on with life. And everybody's thinking, oh, he's such a wonderful man. His wife was sick. She was causing him so much problems. No, I thank God, I know that I have my right mind,
So, Rochelle, like during all of this, where was your family? I know some people must be thinking like, she has a family. Where were they?
That's a very interesting point. Very interesting point. One of the things that a narcissist does and a controller does is that he isolates you from your family. And that's one of the things that happened with me. We were so involved with ministry. We lived it. We breathed it. That was our life. So having a relationship with my family, because they did not belong to the ministry, that was kind of like a no-no. I really had to fight to have my family engaged. But one thing I can say, my family knew my love for them. They knew that something wasn't right. They didn't quite know what was right. And my mother always said, my sister would say, I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't know what was wrong. But when I tell you how I thank God for my family is what saved me. When I was there in the mental hospital, nobody knew where I was because it was all a secret. You're going to go get help, and once you get help, you'll come back. That's what I thought. I had a one-way ticket. Everybody that went with him had a round-trip ticket. If you're coming back, you should have some kind of date of when you're going to come back. I did not have
and for 3 days.
Yeah, for 3 days. I was supposed to go for 3 days, but I had a one-way ticket. Didn't think anything about it, wasn't thinking about it. So when one of the, like I say, there's a lot that went on, but one of the therapists basically almost lost her job fighting for me because she said something's not right. And she got me, and we were having a session, and we had a group session. And after everybody left, she's like, "You're not going anywhere until you call your family and tell them where you are," because they recognized that something was not right. And I was like, and I argued, no, I don't need to know, because I'm still thinking, well, my husband doesn't want them to know, and this is our privacy. She said, no, you don't understand. You're in a situation that you have no clue of the severity of it. And so she made me call my mother that day. And my mother was just speechless. She didn't know what to say. And I was like, well, don't tell anybody else. Don't tell anybody else. But that was it. My mother, I know my mother. That was not going to fly. As soon as she got off the telephone with me, she called my middle sister. And it was the weekend of Easter Sunday. And when she told my sister, and now my sister told me, she just her tears ran down her eyes, because I'm the baby. Regardless of what happens, they all see me as the baby of the family, and they know that, I'm a good-hearted person. How in the world could my sister end up in a mental hospital? If she needed to be, fine, but I hadn't had it exhibited any behaviors that warranted me to be in a mental hospital. So once my sister found out, she began to make plans. That was on a Sunday night. I was in Atlanta. She was in California. She was in Atlanta on Monday evening. And, my family, and when I tell you she dropped her life for me. Her husband was in support because they loved me, they knew my character, and they knew something was not right. So they were committed and stayed with me from day one to make sure that I got the help that I needed, to make sure that I got the resources that I needed to do what I needed to do. And like I say, it was just God's grace. No therapist is supposed to reach out to me when I'm there. But this therapist knew. She said, and I asked her, I said, why are you being so nice to me? Why are you being so kind to me? And I never forget, she said, because God wants you to know how much he loves you. And I just couldn't, because I felt so broken. Like, how could someone take, we work together. This is my husband in the South. Your husband and your pastor, they're esteemed so highly. Here I am, my pastor and my husband has basically thrown me away and just like, I'm through with you, on to the next. Like it was no big deal. And when it was time for me to be discharged, and that's when the hospital got concerned, they couldn't get in touch with him. He kept giving them a runaround. And you cannot be dismissed unless you're like basically have the care of somebody else, because you're in the mental hospital. They don't, they want to, they don't just let you go. Okay, you're gone, free, go. No, you have to have someone that you're discharged to. Well, he wouldn't come. He had other responsibilities. He had to go to another one of his son's churches, which I now later find out Atlanta and Alabama are just a hop and skip away from each other. It was just, I was supposed to get lost in the system. I was just supposed to get out. He didn't care. And so by that time, that's when my family was alerted. My sister came and got me, and we began to work. That's where my therapist worked with my sister. And when I tell you, it was like only God could put the love in her heart. And to make things how God is so good, the therapist was a spirit-filled believer. She moved here from England, and her area with specialty was working with pastors and their wives for counseling. So it was just to see how God orchestrated that thing. So she understood, and so she was able to minister to me. Every morning when I got up, when I was there, I would call her and pray, and she would pray with me, because she knew that this was a setup. I was supposed to get lost in the system, and but God made a way, and I was, just basically left there, So that was the journey. That was what happened. And, thank God, God has brought me through. And I say all of this to say, one of the things when God brought me out was that, and I shared with you how the church shares with you, pray. I'm a prayer. I believe in prayer, but it's prayer and knowledge. And I recognized there was no one that I could talk to about what I was going through that could identify, baby, you're dealing with a narcissist, or you're dealing with codependency. These are things that we need to know. Just like, for many years in the church, it was a kind of a going joke, about, church people being unhealthy, because we would stay at church and eat late and eat all the chicken dinners, and we would end up having heart attacks and high blood pressure because we didn't have any knowledge. We loved the Lord, but we had no idea about how to eat healthily. Well, the same thing is true. We have to be aware of mental health as well. And so I'm not a licensed therapist. The direction that God has led me to is the area of leadership among leaders. I wanted to be what someone could be for me. As a first lady, as a pastor, as a person that was above in front of the people. I couldn't talk to a congregational member. I couldn't talk to just a lot of people, because there's a certain standard that you're held to. Not that you're perfect, but I just didn't have anyone to talk to. A glass house, you make a title of a book called Suffering in Silence. You're suffering right in front of the people, and they don't know because you have to put the mask on. And I became an executive coach. I got certified through Valerie Burton's CAP Institute, and that was a lifesaver for me. I learned how to gain the tools to be resilient, to how to change my mindset, how to thrive. And that was the thing. I wanted to know, how do people deal with adversity? How it breaks some people, and some people take it and use it as a springboard and thrive. And my goal was, I have 4 girls, and I wanted them to see what life could be like when you find your purpose, when you find who God has created you to be. And that was one of the things, too, that I could not allow my girls to see the way I was being treated. It got to a point where he was being disrespectful to me, and my girls were old enough to begin to see that behavior and to see the hurt on their eyes when he said certain things to me. And I'm not trying to villainize him. That's just a mental disorder that has to be dealt with. It's something that needs to be addressed, and it doesn't matter what your title is. Whether you're a pastor, whether you are a CEO, oftentimes we take those characteristics of leadership and we hold them to a different standard. You still have to be accountable. And there's been no sense of accountability of those actions. And so for me, I wanted to be a better leader. I went into school. I'm also working on my doctorate in business and leadership, because I saw the effects of bad leadership. We had a vibrant, wonderful church, full of leaders, full of high achievers, doctors, attorneys, entrepreneurs, entertainers, professional athletes, because we were genuine in what we believed and what we taught. But some kind of way, you got off. And when in getting off, so many other lives were affected. So many people were hurt. Relationships were damaged. And that was not the purpose of getting into ministry. The purpose into ministry was to help and to protect the sheep, not scatter the sheep.
Yeah. Can I ask, though, I know a lot of people that have been hurt by the church, and betrayed. And your story is a very, very big betrayal, especially when it's coming from the head of, your pastor, and most people, when they are hurt by the church, they turn away from Christianity, and they just don't want to be associated with it. But I sense in you that you are still so strongly rooted and grounded in your relationship with God. And I just wanted you to just talk a little bit about that. Like, what made you decide that you would still be strong and hold on to him and just, still love him? God, that is.
That's a very interesting question. For me, the way, like I say, going back to what the therapist told me, I asked her, why did you do that? And she said he wanted me to know how much God loved me. So that let me know that this wasn't God that happened to me. It was somebody's choices and decisions. We are representatives of Christ, but that's why it's so important. That's one of the things that we taught in our ministry, is to not to have a religion, but to have a relationship with God. And that's what drew me. It wasn't, and I would even say, at times, I thank God I knew God before I knew my ex-husband, because I would not want to serve the God of him. Because the things that I saw, the way that I was treated, the way in which I was just disposed of, that's not the God that I know. And so if anything, I had to draw on my own strength, my own faith. It was beyond just going to church just for the sake of going to church, but it became a real relationship. Daddy God, you are my father, you are my provider. And that was my hope. I knew that if I had nothing else, and that's what I did, I was basically stripped of everything. I had enough to start over again, because I had God who was able to create all things and to make all things new. And I knew that I knew my contribution to that ministry. I just wasn't a face that sat there, even though in some ways I was esteemed as just a figurehead. I knew that there was strategy, there were insights that God had given me. My prayers had birthed a lot of things there. So if I could do that and God could do that with him, I have the same God inside of me. And so I had to allow some things to be torn down and allow him to rebuild in me what he wants to do. And that's why, with my coaching practice, even with ministry, as I step out into that more, God still gets the glory. He told me when this journey first began, he said, you may have taken a detour, but you're going to get to your final destination. And so that's what I trusted him. I continue to trust God, not man. And it was like an illustration that a gentleman gave me last week. He said, people oftentimes want to throw God out the window or throw church out of the window when they have a bad experience. He said, you ever go to the grocery store and maybe you get some bad meat, or you get some bad milk or something like that? He said, you don't ever say, you know what, I'm never going back to the grocery store ever again because they gave me something bad. You just like, that was just a bad situation. That was a bad instance. And you're able to decipher that and say, I need to go to the grocery store. I need the grocery store in my life. Well, I had a bad situation. I picked a bad apple. But that doesn't mean that I throw God away. But I can tell you, it caused me to reevaluate my walk with God. I was hurt. I couldn't understand why he allowed it to happen. And I remember I stayed in the church, though. I stayed in an atmosphere where the presence of God was. And I remember going to church when I was so hurt and so just broken and not knowing what was what was really going on. And I remember looking at people raising their hands so freely and just worshiping God so freely. And I remember saying to God, I said, Lord, I want to be like that again. I said, but right now, I'm just not there. But I know this is where I need to be. And then God began to deal with me in Hebrews 11 about Sarah. She had to judge him faithful in what he had promised. And that's what I had to begin to do, judge God faithful. Have I seen everything that I believe to see? Have I seen everything totally restored? Not yet. But I know. And the fact is, I know my God, and I know that he's always victorious. And as long as I continue to keep walking with him, that's what allows me to keep going, because the story hasn't ended. It's not over yet until God's total victory is seen and manifested in the lives of myself, in the lives of my children, and in the lives of those who were affected. So my faith was not, I guess, weakened, but my faith was strengthened because of who I was. It became more than just something pretty that you do. When your life is on the line and your children's life is on the line, no one knows the journey, the story that I've been through. It was literally a situation where those powers that be were really trying to make me lose my mind. Okay, yeah, you went to a mental hospital, you got out, but we're going to make sure, we're going to make this true that you have, you lost your mind. And to have that stigma, and like I say, those who need to go, that's fine. Get the help that you need. But for someone in your right mind being placed in a situation, and to the point people in the hospital were coming to me, baby, why are you here? Now, what you say you here for? The staff's coming to me. People that come, there's some people that go to the mental hospital every 6 months because they want to just go check in and just get checked on. And so, I don't judge them, but that's what I met those that were there. They were just like, look, life just got too hard. I just need to check myself in. I need a break. So like, okay, do what you got to do. And I met those and they would come to me. They're like, we know the regular people that come in here, but you don't seem like you belong here. And so, and I was telling people, oh yeah, I'm here for depression. And the night that I met with my therapist, she actually showed me my records and showed me why I was there. And I was just...
What was it? What did it say?
It said that I was bipolar, schizophrenic, homicidal, suicidal.
Sorry, wait. You say homicidal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He actually shared with people that I was trying to kill him. I made Tuesdays and Thursdays were his day to stay at the church longer. And so I prepared dinner for my girls and I prepared dinner for him on those nights and served him in bed. And he began to share with some of our close friends that he stopped eating the food that I was preparing for him because he thought I was trying to poison him. And my friends that shared this with me were personal friends. The wife was in tears. She's like, Rochelle, we know you. We know that this is not even your character. How could he propose that you were trying to kill him when I'm doing a kind of 2 meals, one for my children and one specifically for him, but I'm trying to poison him. So it was just, it was just a diabolical scheme to try to make it appear that I was crazy and that he had to do what was best for him and best for his ministry by keeping me away. So, but that's the length that a narcissist will go to. They have no empathy. It's about what's best for them. And so, people ask me sometimes, how do you feel about him? I feel sorry. I have forgiven him. I've forgiven those that were involved with it because for me, my relationship with God is more important to love God than to hate somebody. I don't have to try to get back at something. And I remember the Lord, because, there was a time like, Lord, what's going to happen? What's going on? And God's like, I don't have to put somebody else, I don't have to bring somebody down to bring you up. And so don't worry about that. You don't have to bring somebody down to bring you up. And so don't worry about watching him. I'm God. In my time, I do all things well. So the rebuilding, the restructuring that I had to go through is not just for me. I have 4 girls, young ladies. And I think about, I want to be able to help them navigate life. And then right now, like I said, there's some things that I'm believing for. But I want to be that. Before I'm that to anybody else, any other coach, I want to be that to my daughters, where they can see the strength of God, to see God's glory in my life, to see what a woman can do when she trusts God. And not only that, puts her abilities and develops those abilities. Since then, I had my undergraduate degree, but I went on and I got my master's degree. Like I say, I'm now in my 3rd year of my doctorate program. And, these are things that I always wanted to do, but I wasn't able to do because I was living somebody else's dream. But I wanted to be an answer, to leaders, to churches. I think about the fact that I help build churches, and the knowledge that I have to be able to go in and help ministries, strategize and come up with solutions for longevity. So I have a passion of restoration. The latter part of my years, the latter part of my ministry is restoration. I thank God for those who've invested in me, but now it's time for me to give the gifting in a different way. It doesn't mean that I'm not in ministry, but it also means that sometimes I often say, sometimes when we go to church, it's like we take off our intelligent hat and put on our stupid hat. And people can just tell us anything, and we're just like, yeah, praise God, hallelujah. No, God gave us with intellect as well. And the greatest gift and glory is to be able to use the anointing with the intellect, and it calls revelation and insight. And that's what I've been endeavoring to do, to allow God's anointing to shine on the intellect so that we can be informed, not just pray, but have knowledge, because in the areas that we lack knowledge are the areas that we're going to perish and we're going to die.
So could you tell us a little bit about what it was like? Because you said that you came from your parents' home and you went into your marriage home, but now, you had to live alone. What was that like?
That was an interesting journey. Like I shared with you, well, I did not share it. It took almost 2 years to get a divorce, and then that it was still a custody battle. So I was living it, but I was also fighting. It was so much legal stuff that I had to go through. Learning to live by myself. At one point in time when I lived in Atlanta, my parents came to stay with me, but I wasn't settled. It was always a constant fight. It was a constant that I was dealing with him. So I really didn't have time to think about, I'm alone. I was surviving. So when you're surviving, you're so busy strategizing, trying to figure out, okay, this has been done to me. So what do I need to do to get this? And then too, when all of this happened, you're going to take my children away from me? That was the fight. You're not going to take, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm with them every day. I was that mom that was a part of what they wanted. I was a part of their life, even though we had help, and we had help because I couldn't be all things to all people. My husband wanted all of my attention, and of course I needed to be there for my children. And it's just a lot when you don't know who you are, and when you don't have a voice in your marriage. When you're dating someone, it's important to recognize and see, do they value you? Do they value your input? Because you can be swept up in a fairy tale like situation. Oh, girl, he does everything. He does this and he does that. He does that. But what do? How do you insert yourself in the equation? And so that was the thing. I lived this wonderful life, but it was almost, in a sense, I was standing on the outside. And that's what I tell people that were, come to me that were devastated. It's like, I was just as devastated as you were, because I didn't know that what I was involved with wasn't real. It was real to me, and I thought it was real. But when the covers came back, I was just as surprised as you were. And people say, well, how could you not know? You lived with them. Yeah, I did know. But there are certain things that people can keep from you. The narcissism was present, but I did not believe that it could manifest in the way that it did, to the extent that it did with me. So, as of now, I think that's a part of, how does it feel now being, living a life on my own. That's where I had to do the personal development. That's where I had to do the hard work of getting to know myself, finding out who I was. Like I say, there's some things and projects that I'm working on a little later. But I talk about the 6 pillars that help define who I am and help me walk through this process. It just wasn't some haphazardly thing, but there are things that I learned along the journey. And one is, finding your voice, finding out who you are. And if you have to lose yourself to be with somebody, the price is too great. And that's what I did. I lost myself to be all the things that I was supposed to be, not knowing it. I didn't do it like, I'm going to lose myself. It was that was just the way that I was raised. And one of the things that I, was taught, that the wife is the lamb in the family. And I remember saying that I was in the mental hospital, and an older lady heard me say that. I said that in a group. I said, I was taught that the wife is the lamb. She's a sacrifice for the family. And she said, baby, she said, there's only one lamb. He's already been sacrificed. And I was
Come on.
Oh. So I'm like, what? So what you sacrificing yourself for? Jesus is already sacrificed. No, you just in a messed up marriage. That's what that is. You both submit to one another. You both honor one another. It's a partnership. It's not, if I'm a king, if he's a king, I'm a queen. It's not a king and a princess, or a king and a pauper. So I've learned that you should have an equal say-so in relationships and how things go. If not, you have to really check yourself and see, is this really what who I want to be with? Do they undermine you? A part of gaslighting too is to try to make you feel unsure of yourself. You're always so super sensitive. Why you got to be so super sensitive? Why you got to be? Because I am. God made me who I am, and I should not have to feel bad about who I am or bad about how I show up. Now, if my behavior is bad, that's different. But if that's just who I am and it's not causing harm, you just don't like it. You don't change a person. On one way or the other, you learn to grow with a person. So a lot of it, I believe we had good intention. We just were illy advised. We just didn't have the counsel that we needed to identify my codependency or identify his narcissism, and not recognizing how it could go on to be a train wreck. We were taking care of everybody else, but weren't taking care of ourselves. And that's why, like I said, I go back to coaching. I'm not a therapist, but I'm a coach. I help people become self-aware. I help people not die, because you can get so caught up in what you're doing that you think you are what you're doing. Sometimes we can get so caught up with being professional Christians that we forget to be real Christians. We put on, blessed and highly favored, and we put on the faith. I'm not walking by faith and not by feelings, but you're dying on the inside. Who do you talk to? Who do you share with and say, you know what, I'm having a hard time right here. This season, I need someone to help me navigate this and to be real. And that's what I've learned through this process, because one of the things that I could say, and I said that as Christians, we have to do better. But I was treated better by some of the people I met in the mental hospital than I did in church. And that's a sad situation. But I guess, when you've hit rock bottom, there's a sense of empathy that you develop for others when others are hurt. And sometimes as Christians, we sit on a seat of judgment and we judge others because we've not walked in their shoes. But this experience has taught me how to love and be empathetic. You don't know what people are going through. You don't know what challenges people are facing. And the best thing you can do is show love, be kind, and try to be there to support as best as you can and not judge. Allow the Holy Spirit to bring change. He's the only one that can bring change. God commanded us to love one another, not change or condemn one another. And so, even with my message of sharing what I shared, I was so prayerful and so mindful, because I don't want to discredit or slander or hurt anybody in the process. But I know that what I've gone through, I have to share my story. I have to share what happened, because what happened. And it was unfortunate that I felt like I didn't have a lifeline, and so we have to do better as far as being there for one another and being real with one another. It does not mean that my faith failed me. As you asked, well, how did you not lose your faith? My faith was intact. It was just some natural, practical things that I was not aware of. And because I did not have knowledge, I perished in those areas. So we have to be holistic. If you don't know how to manage your finances, you cannot expect God to give you a miracle every day. You're going to have to learn how to get on the budget. So there's some practical things that we have to do with the spiritual. And that's just how God wants us to be, to be well-rounded, not, flaky, but well-rounded and solid individuals that represent him. So first and foremost, I'm a Christian, but secondly, I'm a coach. And, that's what I desire to do, to position myself to be help to help others, navigate change, because life will come with changes and surprises, but it's how you respond to those changes that makes the difference.
So we are actually coming up to an hour. This has passed so quickly. But right now, Rochelle, I would love for you to tell the people, where can they find you? How can they work with you? If, we're talking about women leaders who need some support, that need a place where they can just go tell their truth and then figure out what next to do. So how can they find you? Where do they find you?
Well, right now I'm in the process of restructuring my social media presence, but I am on Instagram under Graced Solutions. That's GRACED Solutions. You can reach me there. You can also reach me at Rochelle, ROCHELLE, at gracedsolutions.com. I'm in the process of working on my website, but if you can reach out there with me. I've pretty much done, word of mouth, with my clients. Yeah. But as God is kind of pushing me out of my comfort zone, I'm beginning to, get a little bit more where I'm a bit more accessible. But it's Graced Solutions, not Grace, but Graced Solutions at Instagram.
I'm just going to add, she also she is international, guys. So she works with you wherever you are. And especially with Rona, she is able to work with you anywhere where you are in the world. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Well, you've made me international, Chula. I never would have thought that my first podcast would be in Zambia, in Africa. So thank you for making me international.
And I just want to say thank you for sharing your story. It's such a powerful story. And, we always look at people from the outside and think, everything's okay. I mean, you're beautiful. And I know when you were First Lady, everybody was like, oh my gosh, First Lady. But, no one would have guessed that this was happening. And I think that's true for so many leaders, because, they say, it gets lonely at the top. Like the higher you go, the lonelier it becomes. And there's no safe spaces for our leaders, and especially the women leaders, to be able to just find that place where they can speak their truth and just find counsel, the right kind of counsel, to find the right help. And I applaud you so much for going through this and just making it such a beautiful, like turning it around into something so beautiful in your practice, in your coaching. And you're amazing. I just think you're amazing inside out.
Thank you, Sheila. I appreciate that. Thank you for believing in me, and thank you for the opportunity to share my story. I just appreciate your humility. And like I said before, thank you for giving a voice and a platform for women. So I applaud you in your endeavors, and I'll continue to wish you the best in all that you do.
Thank you.
I told you. You have to hear it to believe it. If you want to watch the video, you can find it on my IGTV at Chulu by Design. Girl, I have no poker face. I was like, Sewa, my jaw was on the ground the whole time. Ladies, I think it is so important that we are very mindful about who we choose to date and eventually marry. I saw a post on social media that said something to the effect of, don't focus on his wallet, but have you checked his mental health, I mean, I would also add check his relationship with money, but that's just me. So when you see the warning signs, please run away like a gazelle. Fast. You cannot control anyone but yourself. Therefore, you cannot change him or save him. And if you're in a tricky situation right now, do not feel embarrassed about changing your mind. Your life is more valuable. Please reach out to Rochelle on social media at Graced_Solutions. Tell her you heard her on the Africana Woman podcast and show her some love. Thank you so much for making us part of your day by listening in. I truly appreciate you. Please help me get the word out about Africana Women Podcast. All you have to do is take a screenshot of this episode and post it on your social media stories. Don't forget to tag me at Chulu_by-design. I love to see your feedback. Now, you know my playground is Instagram. If you want to chat with me personally, drop me a line. So until next week, I want you to remember, know your roots, grow your purpose. This has been a production of Ulendo Creative Media. You can find out more about their services on www.ulendocreative.com.